instruction. Just hit pause on that Diggable Planets track. That's so sweet. We could have kept it going, but it's cold out there, but it's not nearly as cold as it was on Friday and Saturday, right? So I'm glad that you had your launch tonight instead of on Friday and Saturday. We did have a launch on Saturday, Roberto Carlos Garcia, and that was amazing. Like 60 some people turned out for that. I couldn't believe it. But thank you all for coming out on Monday nights. Definitely not a night that tons of people come out to poetry events, but I know you all came out because José Olivarez is not any poet. He is a singular talent, one of the most exciting poets in the United States and the world. So let's give him an early round of applause. Let's get the energy going. We're really excited to have you in the house. You look super serious right now. Like you're nervous because I said you're one of the most exciting poets in the United States, but I really believe that's true. So I'm personally excited to be here just to witness it. We are here with our friends Books Are Magic, who have opened a store down the street, which we're really excited about. If you don't know who the fuck I am Jason Koo of Broken Poets. I'm going to make a couple of announcements about upcoming stuff that we have at Broken Poets, and then I'm going to turn the show over to Christina at Books Are Magic to introduce Jose. If you don't know anything about Broken Poets, we are kind of a multi-purpose nonprofit. We do workshops, we do events, we do a lot of different stuff. We have drop-in classes at this particular space. A couple things we have coming up. Next Friday, we have a free Broken Poets reading series event at 6:30 p.m. if you want to come back for that. 3 poets are reading. Brione Janet, Joanna Furman, and Dawn Lundy Martin are reading, and there's still tickets available for that. Again, those are free, but you do have to get a ticket on Eventbrite. Next Monday, February 13th, I believe, Eugenia Lee is leading our next Brooklyn Poets Yawp, which is our monthly workshop and open mic event. That's our most popular event, usually sells out, so if you want to get a ticket, I recommend getting a ticket soon because it is getting close to capacity at this point. If you're interested in taking a workshop, February 12th, this Sunday, is the early registration deadline to get $15 off the workshop, or you can get a membership and get those workshops $25 off if that is more appealing to you. Last announcement I'm going to make, we have a book launch coming up after this one. A couple weeks later, you see some of the flyers around here. Gabrielle Bates, I also think one of the best poets in America, is launching. It's an East Coast launch for a book. She lives in Seattle. She's going to come out on February 24th, a Friday. Tickets are flying for that one, so I suggest getting a ticket in advance. That will start at 7 p.m. That's all I've got. I'm going to turn it over to Christina, Books Are Magic. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. My name is Christina, and I'm the events coordinator at Books Are Magic, which is the bookstore just a few doors down on Montague. We're really excited to be here tonight, and before we get started, I just wanted to get a few housekeeping notes out of the way. I first wanted to thank Brooklyn Poets for allowing us to use their space for this event. We'll be doing a hand-raised audience Q&A towards the end of the event, so start thinking of questions to ask now. Though many of you picked up a copy of the book on your way in, additional copies will be available for sale where you checked in with my friend Jules. After the talk tonight, Jose will be signing and personalizing books at the table right here. If you're joining us virtually on the YouTube livestream, we'd love to encourage you to buy a copy of Promises of Gold online using the link in the livestream description. Tonight, it's my privilege to introduce José Olivarez, who will be joining us to celebrate the release of Promises of Gold. Promises of Gold is a groundbreaking collection of poems addressing how every kind of love, self, brotherly, romantic, familial, cultural, is birthed, shaped, and complicated by the invisible forces of gender, capitalism, religion, and so on. But even though the path to love is not easy, it is a path worth treading. José Olivarez is the son of Mexican immigrants. His debut book of poems, Citizen Illegal, was a finalist for the Penn/Gene Stein Award and a winner of the 2018 Chicago Review of Books Poetry Prize. It was named a top book of 2018 by a number of publications. He co-edited the poetry anthology The Breakbeat Poets Volume 4 Latinx. He co-hosts the poetry podcast The Poetry Gods. Without further ado, please give a very warm welcome to Jose.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? My name is Jose Guadalupe Olivarez. What's going on, YouTube? Jason, I couldn't help it. I never know what my face should look like when I'm being introduced. It's like, I don't know, it's strange. But I appreciate the introduction. This is the second time that I'm reading from this collection. I read at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe on Friday, which was really cool. So, I'm still learning this book. So I really hope you enjoy the poems. I worked on it for a long time. I'm really proud of them. Real quick, raise your hand if this is your first time coming to a poetry event. Are any of you new to this? One person. Cool. Welcome. Thank you for being brave and raising your hand. I like to think of poetry readings as being communal. And so what that means to me is that as much as I'm giving a reading, it's also a back and forth, right? So you don't have to be library silent. You can make noise at your own discretion. And with that, I'm going to read the first poem. This poem is called Ugly. I'm done with beauty. The rich can have it. Done trying to imitate their laser-printed faces. What do I know of beauty? But my brother's lip only smiles. He started smiling with his whole mouth once he got his teeth fixed. The joke's on him. He's still ugly. Apologies for all the eyes I've wounded with my bald head and unibrow. I know I'm ugly like pigeons on street corners, refusing to die. Maybe peacocks are prettier, but I've never seen one in real life. Out here, we wear the fuck out of our common feathers. Ugly like my brother, ugly like my daddy, ugly like laughing with your whole face and never apologizing. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm reading poems, but I'm also kind of taking notes. I'm like, all right. Some of the jokes landed. Gotta work on that delivery. This poem is called Two Truths and a Lie. I wrote it because I do a lot of icebreakers, and one of the icebreakers that's very popular is Two Truths and a Lie. So I started thinking about what would that look like as a poetic form. Two truths and a lie. The first thing I see when I look at myself is my belly. Belly greeting strangers with its round hellos. Hello is the first word I learned in English. In English, there is no word for fail. Fail is how I feel even in love. My love calls me fine and wobble, and the mirror says belly. Belly, 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 belly. Belly, is there no chance for peace between you and I? I dream of abs. Abs on bicycles. Abs dotting the night sky. Sky filled with cotton candy clouds. My tongue writes my images. Imagine one slice of red velvet cake, then imagine another. Another dream is the one where I get stuck in an elevator. All right. Listen, I'm trying to listen. Elevator as metaphor for self-love. Maybe I should take the stairs. Stairs like in that famous painting. I go up and up, but end up downer than down. All right. This next poem is called Wealth. For some reason, when I was thinking of like what poems to read, I know what the book jacket says about it being a lot of love poems, and I'll get to the love poems in a second. But these are the poems that I was like, I haven't read these in a while. This poem is called Wealth. It's after Lucille Clifton, and yeah, that's all you need to know. Oh, shout out to Lucille Clifton. Wealth. Don't talk to me about wealth. When I got into Harvard, my guys joked it was to mow the lawns. I laughed until I met my roommates, and they offered me a broom. If I accepted the broom and beat the cobwebs out of their heads, do you think I'd forget? Now I make poems in languages they can't register. You feel me? In every poem I hide garden shears. Invitations to banquets and they still don't spell my name right. Apologies. When they say José, the only people to turn their heads are me and the janitors, line cooks, waitstaff, yes, landscapers. José el poeta y José the gardener, each of us biting our tongues, trying to make beauty grow from soil covering bones barely under the surface. That's it. That poem was inspired by being broke at the university, in case that wasn't clear. Alright. This next poem is called In the Dream, and it's a poem that I wrote about my mom. It's also a sonnet, if any of you are poetry nerds and like knowing those things. In the Dream. My mom unmasks herself and reveals another mask. Chores, Catholic radio sermons, Sábado Gigante. Every mask reveals less. Whoever my mom is when she's not dishing chisme is a prayer between her and someone else. Maybe her sisters have seen her dance with a broom or skip rocks on a lake. Maybe in another country my mom lies in the sun with a cigar. I ask her again to tell me what she loves. We don't speak the same language. Even in Spanish, one of us believes love is a duty, duty being responsibility and tax. One of us believes the Catholics took the wrong lesson from Jesus. Love is sacrifice. One of us can't stop thinking about Mary. That was her baby. Under one mask, another. Like a luchador, I'll never know the one who wears the mask of mom. So I'm gonna read a poem from Citizen Illegal, because I was trying to think about you write books, or I write books, and it feels a little bit weird to push one to the side when you have a new one. So I thought maybe one thing I could do is incorporate a poem from the old book whenever I do a reading for the new book. So this is called Getting Ready to Say I Love You to My Dad, It Rains. I love you, Dad, I say to the cat. I love you, Dad, I say to the sky. I love you, Dad, I say to the mirror. It rains and my mom's plants open their mouths. My dad stays on the couch. Maybe the couch opened its mouth and started eating my dad. I love you, Dad, I say to the couch. Its tongue working my dad like a puppet. I hear the rain fall and think the city is drinking or making itself clean. I am here with my dad and the TV drones on and on, so I'm not sure I hear it. My dad grunting and nodding. Not the mushy stuff I was expecting. Neither of us cry, no hug or a kiss, just a grunt and a nod. I love you, Dad, I say to my dad. We sit together and watch TV. Outside it rains. My dad turns the volume up. The city is drunk. The city is singing badly in the shower. I killed a plant once because I gave it too much water. Lord, I worry that love is violence. Sorry. My dad is silent and our relationship is not new or clean. I killed a plant once because I didn't give it enough water. My dad and I watch TV on a rainy day. We rinse our mouths with this water. Okay. Y'all still good? Alright, my bad. It's been a while since I've gotten to do live readings, so I feel out of practice. You know what I mean? I'm like, am I talking too much? Too little? I don't know. I'm trying. So this poem is kind of like a response to that last poem. Let me flip to it real quick. This poem is called Regret, or My Dad Says Love. My dad never said regret, but it hung from his lip like a cigarette. I remember that night in Mexico, my dad home with a little bit of money. diaspora dreamboat. In another life, he could have flirted with the whole bar. In this life, he was home by midnight. My baby brother sick on vacation. To be a dad is to be bossed at work and bossed at home. It's easy to daydream about love when it's a chorus of kisses. What about when love is a dirty diaper and a snot nose? My dad rarely said love, but he always left the bar. I have 3 more poems, and then we can do the Q&A. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you, YouTube, for tuning in on the internet, where a lot of stuff happens now. This poem is called Bad Mexican Sonnet, and it is a sonnet. Even if I don't say it's a sonnet, you could probably assume it's a sonnet. That's about the capacity my brain has these days, is a sonnet. Bad Mexican Sonnet. Sorry to my mom, the best Mexican I know, whose rosaries are worn deep by the reckless sinning of me and my brothers. Sorry to Jesus, the second best Mexican I know, and whose portrait I used to turn around before watching porn. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the Mexicans shaking their heads. Discúlpeme, señora. I went to school in English. Blame America. Blame our uncles and their playboys. Their white women stashed under their beds. Shout out to my cousins. Thank you for welcoming me into the club of Vale Madre. I know I was a good Mexican when I went to school and finished all my homework and hid all my hurts, my hollow, my howling, my haunting, my crown of thorns bleeding silently like the best Mexicans I know. All right. This next poem is called Nate Calls Me Soft. And it was inspired by my friend Nate calling me soft. That's it. Nate calls me soft. If we were better at being honest, maybe it wouldn't take a bottle of something strong to make us talk straight. Straight edge as we used to be driving around in that old Toyota Tercel from open mic to open mic. If I confess that the memory alone makes the corner of my eye itch, would you call me soft? Nate says, yes. B says, duh. Adam says, you were the softest. My therapist says, let's talk about your parents. My brothers say, if all you're gonna do is talk, then pass the blunt. Mexican Jesus says nothing. Mercury is in reggaeton. Do the stars only talk to women? Tonight the stars are hidden by the brash lights of the city, and I want to say my friends can see my softness through all the jokes I crack, but maybe I don't need the stars to be tender. Maybe the next time I see you, I'll slap away the dap, pull you in close, and tell you under the ordinary streetlights how much I love you and that you still ain't shit. I'm gonna read one more poem. Thank you again to everybody for coming. I want to say thank you to Rita Powers, who's my editor, and the whole team at Post. Thank you to Amelia Phillips for coming. Amelia's my agent. Thank y'all for making me feel like a rapper. You know what I mean? Like I have an entourage. This last poem is a love poem that I wrote for my wife, for Erica, who's also here, so thank you for coming. Erica's heard all these poems a billion times and still is very nice to me when I read them again. So, this is called Love Poem Beginning with the Yellow Cap. I ask you, what's the first thing you think about when you see the color yellow? And like a real New Yorker, you say yellow cabs. Not sunlight or a yellow ribbon tied around a vase of fresh begonias. Yellow cabs honking down Broadway. I still remember the night we first shared a cab. You whispered honey, whispered lace, whispered chrysanthemum. All that practice, and it turns out I had never ridden in a cab the right way. Around us, the street lights blurred into yellow ribbons, and when you put your hand on my thigh, it was like I knew for the first time why God gave us thighs, why God gave us hands. Maybe God invented yellow for the cabs, so the first time we touched, it could be accented in gold. Thank you all so much for listening. Yeah. So if anyone has a question, I think you can raise your hand, and we will get to you. There's a question.
Compared to citizens legal and promises of gold, where are you with dual identity?
Where am I with what?
With your dual identity?
Mm,
Yeah, I'm just gonna repeat them.
sure. For you too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So compared to citizen illegal, where are you with your dual identity?
I think when I finished writing Citizen Illegal, I was thinking about how, maybe at the beginning of that book, I was thinking about like, where do I land? Am I more American, more Mexican? And I think by the time I finished writing that book, I was like, I don't really like that question. I don't really think it has to be either or. I think that middle ground is really where I feel best. Like, I think I can embrace the uncertainty and the kind of ambiguity and not be scared of it, right? And so I think maybe coming to terms with that, with, really being both all the time as opposed to when am I one or the other, helped me write Promises of Gold in the sense that, like a poem like Bad Mexican Sonnet, there still may be those concerns, but they may be backgrounded a little bit more. Like, I think those issues are probably always going to be textures to what I write, but I think maybe the bigger lens is looking at some other things, if that makes sense. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Who's going to win tonight? And talk to us about the translation of this book because it's so special.
Yeah. You gotta repeat the question. Yeah. It's an important question.
First one, important question.
It's about the bulls.
Yeah.
Are the Bulls gonna win?
We'll take it one question at a time. I really hope the Bulls win tonight. They play the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs are also bad. So they should win. It'll be a problem. I feel like we already lost to the Spurs.
Well, we lose to the bad team.
We lose to the
That's
bad
very
teams.
good.
Yeah. That's a good point. We do lose to the bad teams. I hope they don't lose tonight, but you can't be sure. I feel like that's the team, right? I feel like they win every game that I think they're going to lose, and they lose every game that I think they're going to win. So they'll probably lose. That's probably the answer. And then the second question?
Can you tell us a little about the translation of this book?
Yeah. So the book is called Promises of Gold, and then if you flip it, it's called Promesas de Oro. And so rather than have the translations kind of side by side, you can read it straight through in English and have that experience, and then flip it and read it straight through in Spanish and have that kind of cohesive experience. which to me made sense because I like being able to read through and then come back and read it the other way if I want. The translation was done by a friend of mine from Mexico City, named David Ruano, and David is incredible. My favorite part of working with him is not only, was the translation from like English to Spanish, but there are like some very specific Chicago references in the book. And so David would email me and be like, what do you mean by throwing up forks? And then I have to send him like a Wikipedia link to like the GDs. And that was very entertaining to me. So yeah, David is incredible. And he also like is very good at listening for the particularities of language, right? Like, he would be like, which of these slang phrases do you like for this translation? And then he'd be like, musically, this one sounds best, but I think maybe this one is more on point with the meaning. So do you like the music or do you want to kind of stick to the meaning? So yeah, I'm really excited for the Spanish translation to be in the world and for people to get to experience them both ways. Yeah.
So I anticipate that as more people read this book, there's going to be a lot of discussion around the love poems, right? You made reference to it earlier. And considering the moment that this book is entering the world in, I'm curious what, if anything, explicit or implicit, you think the book is saying about different types of love as either a political action or a series of political actions. Because there's a lot in your book that I think, it's doing a lot of different things at once. And so I was curious about your perspective on it.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, that's right. My bad, you
I
two.
just want to hear Christina repeat that over.
Thank you, Christina.
I can walk up there if you need to.
Yes.
Can you tell us what this book says about different types of love?
Basically,
Yeah. That's a good question. I think in the process of writing it, I had like a very simple idea, right? Which was just like writing a bunch of love poems because they're challenging and because there's all these people and communities that I love and want to celebrate, big and small. And in that process, what happened was that pieces of the world would leak in, right? Miniature violences of all kinds, pandemics of all kinds. And what I found was that it taught me that is in part what it means to be in community with people, right? Is that there's no vacuum type of world that we're going to live in where everything is kind of going to be like all power will be even between people, right? And so for me, it's like, I guess the book for me continues to ask me like, how do I show up for the people and communities that I love in the middle of all of these potential violences that we face every day. And so for me, maybe that's where I'm at right now. I'll be curious to see what readers think because I don't, that's where I landed. I wonder where other people will land and what other people will think.
Can you talk a little bit about the artwork?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm getting better. Go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about the artwork?
Thank you, Christine. Great question. The artwork was done in-house at Henry Holt's, and it just features some of the imagery from the book. One of the things that I thought would be cool is, I really love the artwork of my first. Oh shit! I really love the artwork of my first book, And so I wanted to have like some of the same elements, right? So you see the yellow is kind of playing on the repetition from the first book. Likewise, there's like a masked element in this collection similar to the first one. So I like that, you know, like I said, the books are kind of talking to each other. And even in the artwork, I think they do that. I also just think that it's beautiful. Like, even like the little details, so there's like different textures. Mackenzie, who's my other agent and isn't here tonight, she was telling me about how there's like particular laminates or something that I don't understand. So it's also like a beautiful object, and that makes me happy.
Okay. I feel like a lot of your identity as a poet is very based in Chicago. But my understanding is that you wrote this book in Harlem, New York, and New Jersey, So I guess if you could talk about how change in location and maybe other changes in your life influence poems.
Can you talk about how changes of location and other changes in your life have influenced the poems?
Yeah. I think there's like a particular type of loneliness that I sometimes feel in New York. Not like a homesickness necessarily, but there's just so many people here that it kind of if I'm feeling any bits of loneliness or tenderness, it kind of highlights and amplifies that kind of loneliness. So I think parts of that kind of seep into the work. I also think New York is also like a really beautiful city. And so like there are particular moments that kind of are like flashbulb moments for me. Like one was walking up the stairs on the AC train back when we lived in Harlem, when it was like around sunset, and just like the color of the sky was always breathtaking to me, and I always wanted to like put that in the poems, right? So those are some of the things that kind of find their way into the poems. The poems are always going to be hella Chicago because like I was saying with the translation answer, right? Like it's also just like sometimes I slip into those vocabularies without really knowing it. The other thing though is that like New York City and now Jersey is like where we've built our home, right? And so I think that really grounds the collection too. I think maybe I'm still thinking about exactly how those environments and locations seep into the poems, but for sure, I mean like the love poem that I read tonight, right? It's like a very New York love poem. So yeah, I don't like to talk about how much I enjoy the city, you know what I mean? It feels traitorous of me, but for sure, like this is where we've kind of decided to build our lives for now. So of course I think it's had a big impact on the collection. Yes.
How would you describe your love for Chicago?
How would you describe your love for Chicago in one word?
Complicated. Is that a cop out? I feel like that's the best word. Complicated. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely should know the others, but I don't know, how did you fall in love with poetry?
How did you fall in love with poetry?
My high school had a poetry slam team, and the poetry slam team gave an assembly one day, and that assembly took place during chemistry. So I was like, look, I don't know what poetry slam is, but you know. But like, yeah, ground level, it's gotta be better than chemistry. Whatever it is, even if it's awful, I'm still like in the auditorium, right? I can just not listen. And it was really great. I mean, especially back when I was a high school student, you know, the education model was very much the kind of bank account model, right? Which is like the students are all bank accounts and the teachers deposit information. And so that poetry slam performance was really the first time that I saw the students like talking and the teachers listening. And the students weren't just talking, but they were like reading poems about our neighborhoods and, you know, about like sex and race and class and all of these things that we didn't really get a chance to talk about in like American history. And so for me, there was something that called to me, and like the power that the students had. I was like, I've never really thought about any of these things before, but I'd like to, and I'd like to have a space where I can kind of ask these questions and play with these thoughts and be taken seriously. Any other questions? Yeah.
I can talk mad loud a bit. So, this might sound redundant, just kind of speaking to a lot of other people have been speaking to, because I think that's what we're just kind of all orbiting right now. But there's, you know, English, Spanish, Mexican, and American, Chicago, New York, and particularly I'm thinking of the love poems, where on one hand I'm hearing Morgan Carter saying the love poem is dead, and on the other, Ross Gay saying everything is a love poem. So how in poetry do you specifically or think that we all together should break with and talk about the binary?
You want to give that a
Wait, I'm trying to process the question.
Yeah.
I feel like I lost.
You could just say, how does poetry talk about the binary?
Alright.
How can we talk about the binary? I'm editing in my head, I'm a poet.
Alright, through poetry, how can we fuck up the binary?
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking about the first part of your question about like, you know, what Morgan said, love poems are dead, and what Ross says, which is that everything is a love poem. And for me, like, I don't think that either answer is wrong. I think they're both right. You know what I mean? So in terms of like, I guess part of what I aim to do is embrace all of those moments of conflict as opposed to trying to write a poetics that is pure in any way, right? Like, I really enjoy writing sonnets, but there's like, part of what I enjoy about sonnets is kind of fucking them up, you know what I mean? Like, kind of, like, another way to put this is I think a lot of my poems are failures in a certain way. And I think of them as failures because a lot of my poems, or a significant number of my poems, are trying to communicate with people that I love that have passed away, right? Or trying to bring them back into the room for a second. And that communication ends when the poem ends, right? And so the poem inevitably kind of fails. But I don't think that I think there's something valuable about the practice, about extending that moment of conversation, even if it's a doomed conversation, right? Or if it's a conversation that has to end. I think it's worthwhile to practice. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to practice, right? It's, you know, to kind of zoom out a little bit, right? And maybe go back to Courtney's poem, right? I think about where we are in this country and in the world politically, and sometimes it's really hard for me to believe that we are going to win all of the struggles that we need to win during my lifetime, right? That doesn't mean that it's not worth actually pushing to win those battles, right? That doesn't mean that it's not worth practicing and trying to make it, to enact it, even if that moment only exists between us, right? Only exists in our relationships with our loved ones, in our relationships with the people that we're in community with. So, yeah, I feel like I went off on a tangent, but I really love the question, and I really do think I think that maybe the question is the answer, right? Which is like that perhaps for me the question that your question is what we need to be asking, which is like how do we write a poetry that fucks up the binaries? That doesn't have to be, you know, either spoken word or page, right? That embraces the complexities of both places. And I think there's been a long history of poets that have been doing that. Yeah.
All right, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. If we could give a warm round of applause for José. He's going to be signing at the table right here. If you wouldn't mind just giving him a moment to